Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Monday, the start of a new week and the start of a week that sees Arsenal in European semi-final action. That huge game against Villarreal fast approaching, the first leg in Spain on Thursday. There'll be lots of build up to that game as we get closer to it. We'll be speaking to Mikel Arteta on Wednesday. Ahead of that one, speaking to a player as well. Not sure who that player is yet, but we will be speaking to two of those, Arteta and a player, before they jet off to Spain on Wednesday morning. So I'll bring you all the latest updates from that when it takes place. We'll be speaking to Unai Emery as well on Wednesday. I think their press conference is later on in the day. That will be interesting to get his take ahead of his meeting with Arsenal for the first time since he left the club. The most successful manager in this competition, got Arsenal to the final as well. Obviously failed miserably in that final. I'm not sure if that's really his fault or the players' fault. I think he sort of put it down for the players more than Unai for that one, because it was an abysmal performance. But he is the most successful competition manager in this competition. Won it 3 times with Sevilla. Remarkable that. I don't think he's ever lost a knockout game. That's apart from a final in this competition, which is absolutely remarkable. So he knows exactly what it takes to get his team through to the final in this competition, and Arsenal are going to have to be at their very, very best to get through a Villarreal side that are pretty decent. Pushed Barcelona very close yesterday, lost 2-1, having a good, solid season in Spain under Emery. And Arsenal, they're going to have to somehow raise themselves and pick themselves up off the floor, because it's been a terrible week for them on and off the field. Momentum absolutely ground to a halt. Confidence really, really low. You just look back at that last week, terrible week. The draw against Fulham, the defeat against Everton, the Super League fiasco, the protests off the pitch. Arsenal somehow got to find a way of picking themselves up, putting all of those distractions to one side and finding a performance out in Spain, because you do feel if they're going to get to the final, they're going to have to get a positive result in this first leg in Spain, because their form at home has been terrible recently. Since that great win against Spurs in the North London derby, they've played 5 games at home, not won any of them, lost 3, drawn 2, only scored 2 goals, not kept a clean sheet in any of them. The form at the Emirates this season without fans has been pretty woeful. Really do struggle to get positive results at the Emirates. Away, it's been a different story recently. You look at their recent good performances. They've come away from home. The great win in Prague, the win at Sheffield United. They're scoring goals away from home. So you do feel if they're going to get through, then Thursday night is going to be absolutely crucial to that, because if they're going to have to come back and get something at the Emirates with the form that they're showing and the way they struggle with seeing games out, you do feel that Villarreal would probably go into it as favourites. So Arsenal need to get a positive result in Spain. They need to come back with something. And to do that, they're going to have to play a hell of a lot better than we've seen recently in the last couple of games. Will they have some of the big players back? We're not sure yet. Lacazette, Aubameyang, David Luiz, even. Luiz did return to training at the end of last week, so you fancy he's got a very good chance of being involved. We're not so sure about the strikers yet. That will become clearer as the week progresses. If Arsenal could get one of them fit, then that would be a big, big boost for them going over to Spain ahead of Thursday night's game. So lots of build up to that throughout the week, so keep your eyes peeled. But this video mainly is going to be about the takeover story, because it's not going away at the moment. It continues to build. Obviously, we had the protests on Friday against the owner, Stan Kroenke. I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon. It feels like that might be something that's a regular occurrence before home games nowadays, potentially not on the same sort of scale that we saw on Friday, but certainly the protesters, or some of the protesters, wants to keep it up, to keep the pressure on Stan Kroenke. And we've seen now there is interest, and genuine interest, from Daniel Ek, the Swedish billionaire, the owner from Spotify. He tweeted out on Friday during the protests that he was interested in buying Arsenal and would be willing to speak to KSC about a takeover. And that story has now moved on a little bit. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but if you haven't, then head over to the Daily Telegraph's website today, or go to and find Matt Law on Twitter, because Matt has put out a story about Daniel Ek's interest in a takeover at Arsenal, and he's reporting that Thierry Henrym, Dennis Bergkamp and Patrick Vieira are all involved in this takeover talk. The 3 Arsenal invincibles, absolute legends of the club, have joined together with Daniel Ek to try and launch this takeover bid and tempt Stan Kroenke into selling Arsenal. Huge story, absolute PR win for Daniel Ek, having those 3 on board as well. Just seen the excitement on social media this morning after that story has broken. It's a massive PR win for Daniel Ek. He's certainly playing it well in terms of the PR game at the moment. Whether that leads to anything, we'll have to wait and see. But he's it's a really interesting story from Matt. So I do urge you, if you haven't seen it yet, head over to the Telegraph and give it a read. We know he's an Arsenal fan. Daniel Ek, he tweeted during those protests, said, as a kid growing up, I've cheered for Arsenal as long as I remember. If KSC would like to sell Arsenal, I'll be happy to throw my hat in the ring. Now, having these three legends involved in it is certainly going to get the fans on side and get the supporters on side. The issue with it is that, as I've reported many times, that KSC and Stan Kroenke, they don't want to sell Arsenal. Josh Kroenke, during the fans forum on Friday, again said that they had no intention of selling. He was asked, do they still consider themselves fit owners at the club? He said, I believe we are fit to carry on in our positions as custodians of Arsenal. We were put in a very difficult position by forces outside the club with the Super League. We have some big plans. We have the same plans for summer that we had several weeks ago, and I'm still very excited about that. So the KSC position remains the same as far as I'm aware, and what I've been told, that they don't want to sell Arsenal. They never sell. They don't sell their assets and their franchises. It's what they're known for in the States, and they're very, very good at riding out public criticism. This is the same Kroenkes that took St. Louis Rams out of and his own state is where Stan Kroenke's from, and he took St. Louis out there and moved them to LA and California. He survived. He had huge amounts of credit. Imagine doing that, taking the Rams out of your own state and moving them to another one. And he did that, and he survived the criticism there. He cocoons himself from it. He stays away. It's a whole silent Stan type thing. And so the criticism he's getting, the protests that he's seeing over here now, Daniel Ek throwing his name very publicly into the ring for a takeover, it's not the sort of thing that is really going to be affecting Stan Kroenke. It's kind of like water off a duck's back. And so whether this leads to anything, look, we don't know. But in terms of the Arsenal fans, it's all about keeping the pressure on. And if Daniel Ek can put together a proposal that is remotely interesting to Stan Kroenke, then that will help, obviously. But you look at the finances involved. His value is believed to, his personal wealth, Daniel Ek, is supposed to be about £3.5 billion. That's nothing compared to Stan Kroenke, who's worth about £7.5 billion or £7 billion. Spotify, though, you have to remember, is valued at around £67 billion. So it's all a little bit different there. But I think Forbes valued Arsenal at just over £2 billion. So it's a case of, does he have the money to even do it? If he does, if he is interested in the takeover, personal wealth-wise, obviously he hasn't got that much more than Arsenal are worth. But the whole way that these things go, the money tends to be borrowed anyway when you're buying these clubs. And when you look at what Spotify's worth, you could easily borrow money against that. So it's not just quite as simple as looking on the internet and seeing what he's worth and whether he can afford it or not. So I think you need to kind of look a little bit further beyond that. But it's just going to be really difficult, as I said, in terms of convincing Stan Kroenke to part ways with Arsenal. It's going to be really difficult, and that's why when you speak to people at the Arsenal Supporters Trust and fan groups around the club, they are very aware of that, and that they still believe that their best chance to get Stan Kroenke out is through legislative change that the government could introduce, and that's why they're pushing for this government-led review that Boris Johnson has committed to, that Tracy Crouch will be leading, to try and change through kind of how the ownership structures in England are viewed and how they're allowed to take place. And that's how the fan groups, that's the best way they see of getting Stan Kroenke out, rather than just another billionaire like Daniel Ek coming in and buying the club out of his hands. The AST are relatively supportive of this takeover talk with Daniel Ek, but they want the fans to be involved. They've even tweeted Daniel Ek himself saying that, saying welcome, great to hear your interest, but please make sure you're committed to having some sort of fan ownership involved in any takeover as well. So it's one that's going to rumble on. It obviously generates big headlines. It's a very good, exciting news story. It's one that Arsenal fans are very excited by. But I think you've all got to sort of temper your excitement a little bit and just remember who you're dealing with here when it comes to Stan Kroenke. For Thierry Henrym, it's great. He's been speaking a lot about it recently, not about the takeover, but against the protests. He certainly supports the Arsenal protesters. Looking at what the Super League fiasco was last week and the protests, Thierry said in an interview earlier on this weekend, I do not recognise my club, and what's happened just now with them trying to join a league that would have been closed makes no sense to me. They've been running the club like a company, not a football club, and they've showed their hand. Maybe it's a lack of understanding of the core football values, and maybe the money was too big of a temptation. Whatever it is, they got it wrong, badly wrong. I was genuinely shocked like most people and couldn't believe what was unfolding. I've never talked before, but what happened recently made me realise the fans, this is your club, it is not your club. It is your club, and I'm an Arsenal fan too. I'm proud of what the fans achieved, not just Arsenal fans, but all the fans. The result was a victory for football. And those quotes obviously come in before the news emerged that Thierry is potentially involved with Bergkamp and Vieira alongside Daniel Ek's takeover at Arsenal. Okay, away from takeover stuff, before I wrap this up, let's talk about a few other little tidbits of Arsenal news. Joe Willock scored again for Newcastle. Good job he's not going to be playing next weekend against Arsenal. I think the loan prohibits that. Arsenal go to Newcastle on Sunday, but he scored again, scored an equaliser in the last minute to earn Newcastle a point at Liverpool. That's 4 goals for Willock now since he moved on loan to the North East in January. I think his goals alone have earned Newcastle 8 points, and they're about 9 points clear of relegation. So that shows exactly how important he has been for them. Steve Bruce, talking about him, said, I think Joe's thoroughly enjoying it here. There's lots of conversations to be had, but why wouldn't we want to sign him? He's 21, young, fit, athletic. He can score a goal and he's got wonderful pace. Arguably, Joe's as quick as anyone at this club. So Steve Bruce, very, very keen on signing Joe Willock on a permanent basis this summer. Very interesting to see what happens with Joe. Will he go? Will he stay? What do you think should happen with Joe? Do you think Arsenal should cash in, or do you think he's got the potential to be a big player at Arsenal in the future? Personally, I think this is a great opportunity to sell Joe Willock. I just feel I'm not convinced Joe Willock is going to make a huge impact at Arsenal. I'm not sure he's quite good enough to make it at that level that Arsenal want to be at. When you look at them at the moment, they're a mid-table club, so perhaps he will. But you kind of feel that Arsenal obviously want to go higher than that and get themselves back into the Champions League mix. I'm not sure Joe Willock has the quality to do that. So for me, I think his value is never going to be higher than it is now because of the successful loan spell he's having. And so if Arsenal can get around 20-25 million for Joe Willock in the summer, I think that's something they should be taking personally. And I think he'll go on and have a good, successful career in the Premier League because he's clearly got some talent there. But I just feel if Arsenal want to do what they want to do this summer in the transfer market and reshape things, continue that rebuilding project, they're going to need to raise money. And Joe Willock is a good opportunity of raising money because he's a decent young player. He's English and he's scoring goals, playing well in this loan spell. So for me, I think it's time this summer to move Joe Willock on. Emile Smith Rowe and his new contract. David Ornstein reporting today that Arsenal are opening talks with Smith Rowe about his new contract. And this is something I've discussed before. It feels an absolute no-brainer. He's got 2 years left on his contract. You don't want that to be getting down any shorter, so this summer is absolutely the crucial time when it comes to Smith Rowe and getting this contract sorted out. You would hope it wouldn't be too difficult one to sort out. He is a Arsenal boy. He loves the club. Playing regularly in the first team feels like an absolute no-brainer for all parties to get this one done and dusted relatively quickly. What could help with that is that Richard Garlick is potentially coming on board sooner than expected, and he's going to be the guy taking over as head of football operations from Arsenal, replacing Huss Fahmy, who left earlier on in the year. He has been working with the Premier League and will be moving to Arsenal. That was going to happen in the summer, but it looks like that is now being fast-tracked a little bit, and he'll be taking on the role fairly shortly. And he's a guy who's going to be sorting out contracts and dealing with negotiations, taking the pressure off Edu with that regard. And you look at Smith Rowe, that is hopefully one they can get relatively quickly, and then they've got to move on to deal with all the other issues when it comes to contracts. And there's plenty of those, as we have discussed time and time again in these videos. Going to be a huge summer for Arsenal in terms of transfers, selling players, sorting contracts out. So Richard Garlick is not going to have much time to settle into his job. He's going to have to come in and hit the ground running and get these sorted out and over the line pretty quickly. Team news wise, ahead of the semi-final this week, obviously David Luiz looks like he is going to be back involved for Arsenal, having returned to training at the end of last week. That's positive. Martin Odegaard came on against Everton for like the final half an hour, wasn't it? 25 minutes. So that's a big boost. You think he'll be certainly up to speed ahead of the semi-final and pushing for a starting spot. We're not sure on the two strikers yet. That's going to be the key issue. Can Arsenal get one of those two back fit? You would think with Lacazette, you just feel like it's going to be a little bit too soon. With a hamstring injury, you can't really take a risk with that. It'd be very, very quick, considering it'd be just over a week after he did the injury. Also about a week and a half after he did injury. Would it come too soon? You feel it would. If anything, it's going to be Orbo would have more of a chance of getting back fit for that, but he's not even started training yet, or he hadn't at the end of last week, so it's going to be touch and go. If they're not fit, personally, I'd have Gabby Martinelli as a central striker on Thursday night. I thought Eddie did all right against Everton, but I'd be starting Martinelli as a central striker, and then Pepe and Saka on the wings with Smith Rowe or Odegaard behind him in the number 10 role. Finally, before I go, congratulations to the great Thierry Henrym. Yes, we've been talking about him in terms of the takeover at the start of this video, but he's also been inducted into the Premier League Hall of Fame today, one of the first two inductees alongside Alan Shearer. His record speaks for itself. No one more deserving than Henry of getting that honour. He's been speaking about it. He says to be inducted alongside Alan as the first two inductees into the Hall of Fame is more than special. When I was young, I was just trying to make sure I could get a pair of boots, and now we're talking about the Hall of Fame. During my career, I wanted to play hard and make sure I was fighting for the cause, because that's all the fans wanted to see. If you asked me at the start of my career about entering the Hall of Fame, I wouldn't have believed you. It's an amazing, amazing honour. So congratulations to the King. Congratulations to Thierry. Very worthy of your place in the Premier League Hall of Fame. Right, that's about it for today's video, everyone. Thank you for watching. Like I said, please do keep your eyes peeled to my social media throughout the week as we're building up to that Villarreal game, and any other news that breaks, it'll be all over, covered across the goal.com network. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good day. I'll speak to you soon.